Hello and welcome to the Tech and Sports Podcast. Tech and Sports is a show about how technology is revolutionizing all of the major sports, as well as health and fitness. You can find it on your podcast service of choice. My name's Alex Radu, and I'm here with the one and only Mandy Kovacs.
Hello.
This week, we spoke to Giels Brouwer, the CEO and founder of a Dutch sports analytics company called SciSports, plus all of the biggest news from the last week, new apps or wearables, and your weekly concussion update. But before we get to that, we would really appreciate it if you would review and rate the Tech and Sports Podcast on iTunes and Google Play, or wherever else you get your podcasts from. It really does help us grow the show, and we really, really appreciate all of the support so far. And with that, sit back and relax, because the Tech and Sports crew is entering the game. All right, Mandy, the news.
All right. So first up is news that the Toronto Blue Jays are using bat sensor technology that tracks swing data for players, coaches, and scouts for the first time ever. So the Jays have signed an agreement with Pittsburgh-based Diamond Kinetics, who provides all the tech, and they've purchased 60 sensors that fit on the grip end of baseball bats and retail for about $100 each, including the app program that comes with them. So the sensors track power, swing speed, acceleration, and whether a player's swing is level to help them refine areas for improvement and recognize areas of strength. So they started using them during spring training this spring, and will continue using them in their minor league teams throughout the year. The Jays are also considering experimenting with Diamond Kinetics pitch tracking technology as well, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. And as we've mentioned before, Diamond Kinetics works with more than half of MLB teams, and the Jays are just another one on that list now.
So I really wonder the difference between the teams and the clubs in any of these sports who are publicly announcing that they're doing this stuff, and then the ones who are just privately doing it. Because I would imagine that almost every single club in North America, whatever sport it is, whether it's baseball, hockey, basketball, football, soccer, whatever, I'm sure is doing something like this.
Right.
And it's just we don't know.
Right, yeah, it is interesting that I think there's only been like 10 or so teams that have actually been public with this Diamond Kinetics sponsorship, but I'm sure most of the teams in the league, like they say more than half, I'm sure it's got to be at least 20-25 clubs, which is majority of the league. I don't know why they wouldn't come out and say it.
I mean, I guess sharing secrets, not everyone wants, they're like, oh, we don't want to share our secrets necessarily.
But if so many people are doing it anyways, is that really sharing a secret that you're just working with this company?
I guess it's also, we don't know the true impact of the PR opportunity. If teams have been releasing this info and then find that it doesn't make a big enough splash except for podcasts like us.
True.
Then maybe they're just yeah, we don't need to tell people. Yeah. We're just doing it. And if anyone asks, we can be like, hey, yeah, we are doing stuff.
yeah, I guess some teams are just more low-key than others, really. Okay, and then continuing with baseball for just a sec, the MLB is currently being sued by a company called Sports Media Technology for allegedly breaking a 3-year multi-million-dollar deal and misappropriating its pitch tracking system. So Sports Media Technology is claiming patent infringement, theft of trade secrets, and breach of contract in the lawsuit. So the company signed a deal with the MLB in 2016 to provide the league with its exclusive pitch tracking system for 3 full baseball seasons. But apparently the MLB has gone and found third parties to provide the same service and is refusing to honor the original contract it had with Sports Media Technology. So, I mean, I imagine more stories like this will be popping up as tech becomes a bigger part of sports. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, I imagine that this is the case. And I think it ties back into what we were just talking about with companies that are not, or teams that are not talking about what they're doing. I mean, yeah, obviously this isn't a great thing to have done by the MLB, but if they found other things that are working for them better, then maybe they were like, okay, this is a risk that we're willing to take or something like that. But just, I mean, and this wasn't in the interview that you'll see in the discussion later. But I was talking to Giles afterwards about just the whole concept of hey, what about other sports? Because they're just in soccer right now. And he was saying how, some leagues like the NBA and stuff like that, they already have contracts with people.
Right.
So that could make things a little complicated. So we'll see. We'll see how those things work. I mean, obviously, he wasn't able to go into any detail with me about that sort of stuff and what they're doing and what they're planning. But it is going to be interesting to see how maybe a company benefited just from getting it on the ground floor when they didn't really have anything, but none of these leagues had big contracts.
Right.
And then whether these leagues are going to be willing to break those contracts to get maybe something better.
Well, yeah, actually, speaking of that, last week we talked about Irish sports tech startup called SciSports, who scored a $1.4 billion deal with the U.S. Soccer Federation. And now the company is continuing its success with another expensive deal with the Brazilian national soccer team. And to tie into what we were just talking about, the company convinced the Brazilian Football Confederation to switch providers from their Australian rival Catapult Sports, which is pretty scandalous, and it's apparently a huge deal, especially so close to the World Cup, that this is really just in time for. So SciSports will be providing the Brazilian team with its Apex tracker, which is a data tracking vest worn by players. So that's another example of kind of a breach of contract, but I don't know if they actually had a contract or because this would be a little bit more messy, I think, if that was the case. But
I think that could also just be a case of like, that contract ended and they were up for a new one or something like that, or they were just switching products.
Maybe. We don't know the details, but they kind of stole the business.
I mean, it's also going to be really interesting too, because it's like this is a sports startup about it looks like analytics, and that's very similar to a company like SciSports, but just looking right here, the product that they have is very different.
Right.
So it's like it wouldn't necessarily be crossing over or whatever. So it's really going to see like what these teams end up having in their arsenal. Like they might end up having like 5 different analytics companies or something like that.
Yeah,
who knows?
That's fair.
So it's it'll be really interesting to see how this all happens.
Absolutely. All right, and next up, Nike has begun testing a connected shoe that unlocks exclusive perks for its Nike Plus members. So the shoe is called the AF1 Nike Connect QS NYC sneakers, which is a bit of a mouthful, and they're going to come with a near-field communication chip embedded under the Nike logo on the heel of the sneaker. And so by using the Nike Connect app on your phone, you can tap it onto the logo and access exclusive content, as well as Nike events in New York City, and an opportunity to buy other popular Nike shoes through this. It is unfortunately just in a beta test right now, and only select Nike members will be able to purchase these, but the company hopes to have this in all of its shoes somewhere down the line. The Nike Connect technology was unveiled in September 2017, and its first use case was actually a scannable logo on the bottom of NBA jerseys, where fans were able to scan the logo and go to their team's website, access game scores, highlight packages, and limited edition clothing, tickets, and even Spotify playlists. Apparently, Adidas is also experimenting with this technology, so we'll see who gets this to mainstream consumers first.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, this stuff's just cool. Like, I don't know how much I would use it, but I'm sure some people will. I'm sure I would try it.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be, it's just another example of some of these companies connecting with their consumers.
Right.
So.
It's a marketing thing. Okay, and then next, Real Madrid has announced a partnership with Samsung to create premium video content for use on Twitter. So this one-year agreement will include in-stream video sponsorships that will involve interviews with players, access to comments from the dressing room, press conference material, legendary goals at some point in history, as well as training footage of Real Madrid. So it'll all be sponsored by Samsung, and it'll be available exclusively on the Real Madrid Twitter account.
This is, I think, going to be a really interesting way, because I think this is how Twitter is going to be successful in the video space, because we've talked about how they've kind of failed. Maybe failed's not the right word, but they haven't been too successful with like streaming actual games on Twitter.
Right, the reaction has been disappointing in that turn.
Yeah, it's been a little too long, but if it's smaller clips like this, where you're not necessarily streaming a Real Madrid game, but you are showing content that you can only get on Twitter, from the dressing room, interviews, goals, training footage, stories with the players afterwards, or in the off season or something like that.
Right.
I think that's where Twitter can have a lot of really cool success, rather than putting that stuff on YouTube, which I'm sure they would as well. But they would also just show all that stuff on Twitter, because I mean, I every now and then I see videos on Twitter that I only see on Twitter, that I will only watch on Twitter.
Yeah.
So,
and I think we talked, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, that the MLB signed a pretty similar deal with Twitter as well. So, I mean, you're getting that for baseball. Now you're getting it specifically for Real Madrid. I'm sure we'll see many other teams, many other leagues going forward.
It's that second screen experience,
right? Because
that's what Twitter's for. So I don't think you should try and replace that first screen, which is the TV, and try and like get a game on there, but just enhance the second screen, so then people are already on sports Twitter, So just another way to do it.
That's for sure. All right. And now we have some interesting news coming out from the international rugby players. So we were talking about data a couple stories earlier, and this kind of follows along the same lines. Apparently, there's a legal battle brewing between professional rugby players in their respective clubs and unions over the issue of data ownership. So most sports leagues around the world are tracking some sort of data, but who owns that data has become somewhat of a gray area. The MLB and the NBA have ruled that data collected over the season can't be used in contract negotiations. And NFL players, I believe, own their data and can do whatever they want with it. But this is all up in the air when it comes to rugby. So players are starting to speak out, saying that they should own their data and want the clubs to stop using it without their consent. They essentially believe their data should be afforded the same legal protection that normal personal data is, and that their clubs sharing that data with other clubs or even selling it to third parties could have potentially detrimental effects on their careers and future earnings. So there are already rumors swirling around that clubs are either sharing or selling their players' data to third parties without their consent. So expect to hear more about this issue in the next few months, because rugby players are not happy.
No, and I mean, rightfully so.
Yeah.
And I really honestly think that the next time all these collective bargaining agreements are up in every one of the 4 major sports, data is going to be a huge part of it.
Absolutely.
And I would honestly not be shocked if at some point it causes a lockout of
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Because
I'm sure we're going to see another lockout somewhere.
I mean, even if it's just a shortened one, but they're trying to get ownership of their data, and they should, because it really is really difficult for athletes, I guess, to, I mean, granted, they are making a lot of money, so it's not, but like, it's unfair in negotiations if the team can be like, hey, you jumped 0.5 centimeters or whatever less this season, so we're going to give you 100K less.
Yeah.
Like, how do you quantify the data in that sort of way? So it just shouldn't, I don't think it should belong in contract negotiations.
No, definitely not.
I think there are baseline stats that you can use. Like, you could be like, oh, you scored less goals this season.
Sure.
That's
already available.
Yeah, that's already like stuff that you can see in a box score.
Right.
I think is kind of fine.
Yeah, like if you're an athlete prone to concussions and that's what the data shows, if teams can use that in contract negotiations, that absolutely can affect how much they make and whether they even sign another contract again, right? So I mean, I'm completely on the player's side. Data is the currency of the future, as some people like to say, and I think it's very evident in sports.
Yeah, and players are just like us. They want to protect their data.
Right.
And I mean, like, it'd be unfair for our jobs if, our raises and stuff were determined on really minute data. Yeah. So, like, it would be unfair in sports as well. Like, imagine if you're just working at your job and they were like, oh, you did this thing, like, 2% less, but like, and it was just one random stat that really didn't pertain to anything. You wouldn't be happy if you didn't get as much money.
Absolutely.
So, everyone's gonna have to start thinking about that.
I agree. All right, and last but not least, the New York Road Runners hosted a 10K virtual marathon a couple weeks ago. So runners were able to sign up for the race through their Strava account, which is a running race tracking app type of thing on your mobile phone, and it's completely free. And people were essentially able to run or walk the distance of the race wherever they were at any point during the specified race window time. So you had to do it all in one go, though, so just like you would during a normal marathon, of course. And your progress was tracked by your GPS and uploaded to the Strava app for the road runners to register in their own system. And it was $20 if you were a Roadrunner member, or $30 if you weren't and had to sign up for the virtual race. And all the proceeds from the race went towards the Roadrunners youth and community programs. It sounds like they're also planning on hosting more virtual marathons, so stay tuned. That might be something kind of fun you can do from wherever you are.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool idea.
I do too, right?
Yeah. Just like being able to like be like, okay, I'm gonna run this 10K version.
I feel like it gives you the motivation to run around the block, right? I mean, exactly. I guess you have to pay. It's not free, but that's so much more fun competing against people than just running around for no reason.
It would get me to run.
There you go.
Sure.
Maybe we'll do it. All right, well, that's it for the news today. Now we're going to move on to new apps or wearables.
All right, so there's no real news this week. So I found a really cool use case about smart clothing technology, because we really did talk about it a lot last week and how that's going to be really growing. So over on Digital Trends, Julian Chokatu, sorry for butchering your name, published a piece about how he wore Levi's smart jacket for 3 months. So it was a partnership between Levi, which, as you probably know, makes jeans
What?
and other denim clothing. Did I say that right? Denim. I forgot how to say that word today. Okay.
Nice.
Anyway, so he wore the smart jacket for 3 months. So before we get into this really mini discussion that we're going to have here, it's really just a traditional jean jacket, but the cuff of the left arm is woven with the conductive fiber and a special grade polyester that allows it to act as a touch sensor. Cool. The jacket, which is called the Levi's Commuter Trucker Jacket, then connects with Google's Jacquard tag, which is just a great name, which you snap onto the left cuff. Just looking at pictures, the tag isn't tiny. It's about the size of a USB stick, but it does house stuff such as a haptic monitor, a motion sensor, Bluetooth, and a battery, stuff like that. For those wondering, the battery can be charged through USB like you would anything else, and supposedly lasts up to 2 weeks or even more, depending on how often you wear the jacket. You then pair the jacket through the tag to either an iOS or Android device through the Jacquard app. So how it works is simple. The cuff has 3 controls that you can assign to do really any smartphone activity. Julian, for the Digital Trends article, used it primarily for music. Here are the 3 gestures. Brush in, which is just swiping on the tag toward you. Double tap, and then brush out, which is swiping on the tag away from you. You can configure these 3 motions to anything from music to navigation. However, there are only 3 motions, which does seem pretty limiting in just like thinking about it. So ultimately, the jacket is $350 USD. So Mandy, this is the first version of this technology. It's a really great article and a cool review to read about, so pop on over to Digital Trends to read Julian's article if you feel inclined. Last week we talked about how smart clothing and how that market will be really growing in the next few years, and I have to say smart clothing like this gets me pretty excited. I think that's cool. Like, it doesn't have too many use cases, but like, for instance, think about like navigation, where you just like tap on your jacket and like your phone could then tell you if it's like connected to your car through Bluetooth, it could tell you like how far away you are from your destination just by tapping on your jacket.
If it had any voice features, it'd be like, turn left.
Yeah, well, it would just connect to like apps on your phone. So if your phone is then just connected, I guess, through...
I would want it to speak
through your car as well. But... yeah.
But maybe that's even further down the road. But no, I agree. This does make me excited. The price point is a little high, but that'll ultimately go down.
It is also like the first like or iteration of this technology.
Yeah,
like
when they become more popular, I'm sure it'll get cheaper.
Yeah, like in 2020 and beyond, which is when we were really talking about the smart clothing market really exploding, that stuff's going to be cheaper. It's not all going to be that much. But I mean, obviously, yeah, for now, that's the beginning of this technology. It's going to be a little expensive. But
yeah. I would actually like to buy that Jacquard tag. Do you know if that's possible? Like, if I could just buy that and snap it onto anything? Or does it only work with like smart clothing like this?
I believe this is just specifically for this jacket.
Okay.
At this moment, I don't know what Google's plans are for it. And it is a possibility that they team up with other clothing as well for it.
Yeah.
But it is really interesting. I was looking at just pictures of the jacket. It honestly just looks like a regular jacket. I mean, you can buy that regular jacket for like $150, I think.
Okay. This is just like a special version of it?
Yeah, it's just a special version where like the cuff itself just has that different material, which doesn't look any different. And then it has like the tag, which is just like, it looks like a USB stick. So
okay, cool.
It's not like, it's not noticeable enough. Like, I don't know how often you're meeting people and are like, oh, hey, what's that on your left cuff of your jacket?
Right.
So it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes and how it grows, because I think it's a cool example of where smart clothing can be. And I think there's going to be a huge market for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited too.
All right, so that's it for apps and wearables this week. So up to our concussion update. So every day, a large portion of athletes with a history of repetitive head trauma are battling with a progressive neurodegenerative brain disease called CTE. Symptoms of CTE include blurred vision, dementia, depression, headaches, memory loss, and mood swings. There is no cure, and it only gets worse with time. This is the number one issue in sports, so every week we'll be updating you on what is happening in the world of concussion prevention. So this week, rather than just having a 10-minute rant session where Mandy and I talk about how Gary Bettman is an irresponsible commissioner and the NHL will die out as a sport with him in charge, we have some real news about concussions.
I just want to rant. Oh.
Yeah, we do implore you to look it up, because the NHL is a hot mess.
Yes.
Specifically because of Gary Bettman and his complete irregard towards concussions, but whatever.
He thinks head hits are totally cool.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, great. Yeah, awesome.
You see, we said we wouldn't rant about it.
I know, and I'm like itching to do it, but all right, we'll move on with this.
We'll move on. Okay. So this story comes via Sport Techie, and it's a report from Indiana University. And while it didn't draw any concrete conclusions, its findings are worth talking about. The goal of the study was to see if they could come to a conclusion on whether or not subconcussive impacts, which are common in contact sports, affect brain function. So for those who don't know what a subconcussive impact is, like me, I had no idea what it was.
I saw you Googling this morning.
Yeah, I was doing all sorts of research this morning. Here's what it means. Every week we describe the symptoms of a concussion and how that relates to CTE. However, there are cases where CTE was found in athletes that have never been diagnosed with a concussion. So a subconcussive hit then are those hits that are below the concussion threshold, so the brain is shaken, but not so violently that the damage to brain cells is severe enough to see through symptoms. So it's honestly, when you think about it, a really scary thought. It led to Mandy and I having all sorts of concussion discussions. And, as we keep talking to experts and stuff like that, like we understand that you can't really have a blanket term for concussions. We're going to have different like versions of it. Just maybe stages, groups, whatever. Yeah,
and gradients within those as well, too.
Exactly, yeah.
But I mean, there's so little research around concussions that we can't even really talk about it that much still.
Well, and then you look at a few weeks ago, we talked about the first brain bank in Australia and how they're looking for 500 brains over 10 years.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can't just be like, all right, athletes, are you dying anytime soon so we can study your brains?
Yeah, can you hurry it up? We want to do research for other people.
Yeah, exactly. So it's tough because CTE can, as of right now, can still only be diagnosed through an autopsy on a brain.
Right.
So obviously can't be alive for that. So this study was conducted from the fMRI data of 21 off-season Division I football starters, 19 collegiate cross-country runners, and 11 non-athlete college students who went through a visual assessment known as Smooth Pursuit that is designed to use eye movements to probe brain functioning, and in the past it has been used to show reduced performance in concussed patients. So here's the report's conclusion, which I just copy and pasted to make this easy. Greater cerebral activity among football players while performing an ocular motor task could indicate that they are working harder to compensate for some subtle long-term subconcussive deficits. Alternatively, top athletes in a sport requiring high visual motor skills, such as football, could have more of their cerebellum and FEF, which I have no idea what that means, so I should have taken that out, devoted to ocular motor task performance, regardless of subconcussive history. So they perform the results provide little firm support for any effect of accumulated subconcussion exposure on brain function, simply because it could just mean that these are skills that have developed over time of playing this sport. So each of these findings, while incomplete, presents a unique approach to understanding the role of subconcussive hits in contact sports. The former could mean that as contact athletes sustain those hits, their brain adapts in a manner that changes their visual processing ability. The latter could mean that even without repeated hits to the head, contact athletes practice hand-eye coordination so frequently that their visual processing centers show different activity compared to those of non-contact athletes. So that's what makes this so inconclusive, because according to the report, brain activity differs person to person based on their set of skills and abilities. Like Mandy and I, we have different skills, so our brain activity is different. So the differences in this study could reflect a lifetime exposure of subconcussive blows to the head, or they could come from the fact that this is a visually demanding sport where football players are constantly using their hands and tracking the ball and developing that eye movement. So that's where it gets a little dicey, because it could be this is a serious problem that happens because of brain injuries. And it also could just be this is what football players' brain activity looks like because they have that set of skills that other people don't.
Interesting. So like we've talked a lot about SyncThink's eye sync technology, where you essentially put on what looks like VR goggles and it does like a 60-second test of your ocular movement to see if you have concussion symptoms. So that might not necessarily work or be accurate in football players. Is that what this is saying? That their eye movement just might be like this just by the way that they've developed for the sport?
Well, I think that's where we go back to this conversation of different grades or gradients or different stages and different types of brain activity, because I think it might not be that's the thing, is it could be either or. It could be like
interesting
if they decide that this does indicate that there has been brain trauma. Even trauma might not even. Well, I guess trauma is a broad term. This is just like a subconcussive hit. Doesn't display any symptoms. It's just kind of it just would change your brain activity. So.
Oh my God. Well, that's a little terrifying.
It is a little terrifying. Also, I mean, we're also not medical professionals either.
Nope, that's for sure.
So this is all conjecture as well.
I mean, I think the moral of the story is that we need to do a hell of a lot more research on concussions and brain injuries, brain trauma, just brain activity in general. because no one knows what it does, really.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, like, we have all these discussions all the time. And honestly, this is my favorite part about the podcast, because we are learning so much about this thing where it's like, for instance, I'm a tall person. I've hit my head like probably over 100 times in my life.
I'm fairly tall for a female, and same
so
story.
it's like, well, what categorizes as a subconcussive hit? Or blow to a head. I mean, like, I've definitely like knocked my head against the ceiling, or like a bar, like much harder than if someone had punched me in the head.
Yeah. Oh my God. I was getting out of my car a couple of weeks ago, and I whacked my head so hard on the door frame as I was getting out of my car, which is fairly new. Like, I've dropped down from an SUV, so I'm still not used to it. And like, I swear to God, I gave myself a concussion.
Yeah.
Or like some sort of like subconcussive impact or whatever we were just talking about. It hurts.
Yeah.
My vision was blurry for like 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, so I think that's that's
tall people problems.
That's not great. Tall people problems for sure. I think that's why it's so important to talk about these reports, because even though it's inconclusive, and it's something that it's tough to figure out, I think we constantly need to just remind ourselves that concussions are super important, and that we need legislation, like how Ontario has Rowan's Law now.
Right.
We need more awareness. Like, it wasn't easy for me to even just look up a subconcussive hit. Like, you still have to, like, and even just reading this report, there's so many scientific terms that I don't know. I'm not a, again, a medical professional.
Not a doctor.
Not a doctor. So it's something that we need to be able to make easier to understand and easier to share, and hopefully we do that a little bit.
Yep, that's our goal. All right, awesome. That was it for our concussion update. And now we're going to move into our discussion topic. So last week, Alex was in Denver for the SAS Global Forum Conference and had a great opportunity to chat with the founder and CEO of SciSports, Giels Brouwer, about sports analytics. It was a lot of fun and a great chat, so let's take a listen.
All right, everyone. I'm really excited about who I'm speaking to right now, because right here in front of me I have Giels Brouwer. He's the founder and CEO of SciSports. Giels, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Yeah, lovely to be with you.
Yeah. So I know we're right here. We're in Denver at the SAS Global Forum. You were up on stage talking and presenting in front of the whole conference about what SciSports does. So I know you guys are a Dutch company. So if you can just maybe first explain just what SciSports is and what you guys do.
Yeah, at SciSports we basically help football or soccer clubs. I'll keep it simple, but I'm going to call it football. And we help them to make better decisions by using data. And we develop two things. The first one is an index in which we are able to evaluate the quality and the potential of every player in the world. And the second one is Ball James. That's a new tracking solution where we can do real-time 3D tracking of every player and the referee and the ball in 3D.
Awesome. So just looking at your website, I looked at the expertise tab, and I saw some just things that really, really fascinated me. There's data scouting and then intelligence as a service. So can you just explain what you mean by those?
Yeah, data scouting is basically when you have a lot of clubs in Europe don't have the capacity to hire an entire analyst team or analytics team. So we are their data scouting department. So we sit down with the technical director of a club and we help him by giving him advice on which player he should sign or sell. In the end, data is just a tool. We will never say you should sell him, but we say data suggests that he is the right player to sign, and then he makes a decision. But they are really part of the scouting team. And the intelligence as server is basically an enrichment of that. So we build the data intelligence for the clubs, we get data in, and we give advice out.
Got it. So I also saw, just to go through the product list, I saw that there's Insight, SciSkill Performance Indicator, and then Ball James. Do you want to just give like the quick pitch on each of them?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, the SciSkill is really a tool to evaluate the quality of every player in the world. So I used to play a lot of Football Manager. I was addicted to it, and that was actually the idea to found a company, because I wanted to rebuild Football Manager with real data. And right now, the SciSkill is able to find which is the brightest talent in Chile. And with the SciSkill performance indicators, we go one step deeper, and then we can say, well, this player is he has a creativity of 97, and then we see that he's world class. So that's one step deeper. When we go to the Ball James project, we can even see the ball speed or the viewing angle of a player, or how far the ball dribbles from a foot when he's running with a certain miles per hour or something.
So what's the most like specific stat that you can get, and what's your favorite one that you can pick up?
That's a good question. I think one of the most favorite things we developed was we call it the passing value. And with that we can calculate the chance of being scored within 15 seconds from every pass. So we can see the contribution of every pass to a goal. And we train over 100 million passes to get that model done. So that was pretty cool. And the second cool thing, I guess, is we have a horrible name for it, but basically what we calculate is when a player dribbles inside the final third of the opponent, is he able to give a good action to his teammate in the final in the box area? And that's just one metric that's combined of a lot of different variables.
Okay, awesome. And I imagine you're only doing soccer, football for right now. I imagine this could be applied to many other sports as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the company's called SciSports, and not SciSoccer, but we're getting there. But first, we want to make sure that we change the football industry, and then you'll see us in other sports.
Got it. So we are here at the SAS Global Forum. So if you want to just kind of explain how you're using SAS there for our listeners who don't know, they're a huge analytics company, one of the biggest in the world. So if you want to just explain how you're using SAS in your technology.
Yeah, basically we're a small company. We're now with 50 people, 50 employees, but we built a solution that was applicable in one stadium. And we use SAS together as a deep learning partnership, where we combine the joint R&D efforts to build a solution that's able to be installed in entire leagues. So we use their SAS Via platform and their event stream processing unit to make sure that we can stream the data in real time from the pitch to the media and to every sports fan in the world. And together with them, we managed to scale down. We used to generate 56 terabytes of data per match, and you cannot stream that in real time. So we developed a system that's able to put a GPU on the camera and do the calculations on the camera and stream the outcome to the cloud.
Awesome. Okay, so with fans, how can it's easy to see how clubs can get excited about this technology. How can fans get excited about this tech?
Well, it's again a gaming thing. I'm actually a big gamer, a really fanatic fan of many games, but also the game FIFA. I used to play the Dutch National Championships once, and what we want to do is bring the experience that you get in FIFA to the real football industry, so that you can see a live radar on the screen when the match is being played, that you can see the speed of a player, that you can measure the agility, and all those things is the kind of things I want to know as a fan. And now we can finally make it happen that everybody is able to see it.
So would it almost be at some point just like an app maybe that they have on their phone at the same time while they're watching, and then they're just like, okay, this pass had a 50% chance of leading into a goal type thing? Yeah,
those kind of things. And even if you take it one step further, I want to be able to stream a match in hologram style in real time. Okay. That's what you can do if you track everything that happens on the pitch.
Okay, so like would this hologram kind of just be like on a table type thing?
Yeah, just on a table, or maybe even stream it in a stadium. If I cannot imagine all the things you can build with it. But if you take a look at VR, AR, holographic explorations, that will be new uses at the World Cup in 2022, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure. So that actually, speaking of the World Cup, that makes me ask, are you doing anything with any national teams?
Actually, we are. I cannot say the name of the country now. They're a European country, and I think now they have a good chance of making it to the finals.
All right, that's awesome. So up on stage yesterday, I believe, or earlier, you spoke about a Dutch player who you helped, or you gave data advice to, and he's now on the national team, the Dutch national team. You want to just go through that story?
Yeah, that was incredible. It was his name is Wout Weghorst. Try to pronounce it, but he was playing at the Dutch second tier level. He was a striker, and his contract was not renewed. But according to the data, we saw that he was always on the right position. He always scored the right goals at the right moments and scored a lot of points for his team. And then we said to Heracles Almelo, take a look at this player because he's for free. You can try to sign him now. They went scouting him and they said, well, he looked kind of clumsy, but still he scores the right goals. They signed him as a third striker. And within 1 year, he ended up in the Dutch national youth team. He became the top goal scorer. They sold him for 2 million to a Dutch top club. He became the top goal scorer there, ended up in the Dutch national team, and now he has a value of approximately 10 to 15 million.
You see, that's incredible. So this is all, and you mentioned it earlier, this is all using data as a tool, not the final answer. You're just kind of adding another weapon in these players and in these clubs' arsenal, kind of.
Yeah, that's true. It's not that you're gonna buy a house based on the recommendations that they give you. You want to see the house, you want to feel the house, you want to talk with the people around, and I think that's important for football as well. But it can really help you to find new things in the industry or get you some extra percentages, and in the end, data is getting really important in the decision-making process.
Awesome. Okay, so I just now have a few other questions just about sports analytics that my co-host Mandy and I, we talk about all the time. So have you noticed any pushback on this technology? Do you ever go to a club and they're like, this sounds like it's too much for us?
Yeah, especially in the beginning. The football industry is really conservative. I think every sports industry is conservative. Maybe the American sports are a little bit less conservative. But yeah, sometimes when you go and talk to someone for the first time, you really have to convince them. Or they say, well, we just don't believe in data. They don't even want to listen then. But fortunately, you see the last years, people are understanding better that it can be a support tool instead of data being the goal or something. But I think in the end, the industry is changing so fast and they see that other clubs are using it and they are successful with it, so the rest will follow.
Okay, so right now are you just in European clubs?
One club in South America, and currently we have 3 clubs in the MLS on trial, but no contract signed yet, but all the rest of the clubs are in Europe.
Got it. Okay. So, I mean, just off the top of my head, just speaking about it now, I'm like, well, the MLS in the U.S. and Canada, or TFC, at least the Toronto Football Club, where we're based in, they've been winning. But they could really, I imagine, they can really use it. Have you seen any interest at all in North America from this?
Yeah. It started with the last 2 months. We just opened our version to outside of Europe because we wanted to launch where we were ready. We validated our system in Europe, and now we're ready to go also to the MLS. And yeah, as I said, there are 3 clubs already testing our platform right now, so I think there will be many more to come.
Okay, awesome. So Mandy and I once had this kind of ridiculous debate about AI and data, and we were wondering, and we both didn't think it was possible, but it was something a general manager of some team said, that AI could replace them. Do you think AI could replace a coach or a manager in sports?
That's an interesting topic. I cannot give a definite answer, as it will probably be something we can discuss for hours. Yeah. I don't think you should want an AI to take control, as the players will all have their own personality, and you also give them, treat them well, you have to talk with them, and I don't think they will listen to an AI. Yeah. But if they would listen to an AI, that could be a solution, but I think it will be hard, and I hope the human will always be the ones who decide.
Yeah, no, that was kind of the conclusion we had drawn as well, where we were like, well, I guess it would be cool to see it happen, but then half of a coaching job is to manage your player's personality, and I don't know if Siri or Alexa is going to be able to do that.
No, it would be tough, but what would be really cool if the AI could really advise the coach on do this now, and that he just says yes or no. Yeah. Because then he can also learn from the coach's decisions, and he can really become the assistant. So we should come up with a name, and then let's try it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that just off the top where you talk about the pass percentage, it'd be cool if it was AI was almost like an assistant coach, where it's just on the side and it was like, this guy keeps making passes that are not, talk to him, type thing.
Yeah, like that. Or when a substituted player comes in, and you see that his speed is, his acceleration is 3 meters per second faster than the player that you have against him. So you should replace your own player with a player on the bench, and then you can make sure that the player isn't dangerous anymore. So those kind of things, as an assistant coach, I think AI would be perfect.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, Giels, thank you so much. This is awesome.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Well, that's it for today's episode. Thanks to everyone who listened. That was episode 39, which is pretty incredible. Just a reminder that we're also now in a daily format if you'd rather listen to us that way. You can follow us on Twitter at ITV Tech and Sports, or on our personal accounts at Mandy V. Kovacs and Alex T. Radu. So thanks, everyone. We appreciate you listening.
Thank you.